I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. This episode is brought to you by Dollar Shave Club. I'm sure you've heard about them before. They are great razors with no hassle. You join the club for a super nominal fee, and you'll have a choice between 2, 4, and 6 blade razor cartridges. They'll come to your mailbox every month, and you don't have to worry about buying razors anymore. I've been using these guys for probably 3 or 4 years now, and I love them. It's great to have brand new, fresh razors anytime you want them, without having to think about them or hassle with all those weird contraptions and keys and finding managers and stuff at the store. So check them out. Click on the link on the Support the Show page and get started. This episode is also sponsored by Pure Vitamin Club's Sublingual B12 tablets, which is the only sublingual B12 supplement that doesn't contain binders and fillers and delivers 2,000 micrograms of the B12 form nature intended directly to where it's needed by dissolving tastelessly under your tongue. Everyone needs B12. It's an essential water-soluble nutrient that your body can't make on its own. B12 gives a boost of energy to vegans, active people, people over 65, anybody who is experiencing low energy or fatigue, and anybody who experiences mood swings or is depressed. Click on the photo link on the home page or on the Support the Show page at FascinationStreetPod.com. Hey guys, this episode is David Naumann of Drive Ventures Inc., which is a company located here in San Antonio that does a pretty cool service. They have these machines that I'll let him tell you. Without further ado, David Naumann, Drive Ventures Inc.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
I am sitting here with David, do you say Naumann?
Naumann.
Naumann of Drybox Ventures. Did I say that right?
It's our company's Dry Ventures, our product's Dry Box.
Oh, okay. Okay, so like I was telling you a few minutes ago, my best friend came over a couple weeks ago, and we were just sitting up late night drinking whiskey, and we were talking about some different kind of cool technology, and he happened to mention, he said, and have you heard about this guy who's got like this vending machine where like if you get your phone wet or whatever, you drop it in this vending machine and it fixes it. I was like, what in the fuck are you talking about? This sounds amazing. We pulled out a computer and looked up your website, and oh my gosh. So I'm very excited to be sitting here with you, and I have a million questions, and they all start with, how did you come up with this idea? Well, first, where are you from?
I'm from Austin, Texas originally, but been here in San Antonio for the last 30 years.
What brought you to San Antonio?
First job out of college.
Is it a tech job? Like
No, it was actually in the wireless industry. So I kind of full circle in the cell phone industry.
Golly, so like
when we had the brick
when it
phones.
was cellular. All right. So that brought you here, and you did that for who cares? Now, how did you come up with this idea? I'm bewildered by this idea. This is amazing.
Well, and it's a great story too. So I'm at my office one day, and I'm looking for somebody to weld something for me, and I call this fabrication shop, and they say, oh, it's too small of a job. Tell you what, call this individual. He can do anything. So I call him up, and he says, yeah, I can do that for you. I can make all kinds of things. I have all kinds of inventions, and my latest one is the coolest ever. And I was like, well, yeah, can we talk about this welding job? And he said, no, let me just tell you my latest idea. And I was like, well, okay, all right, what's your latest, greatest idea? And he said...
and this is all on the phone?
This is all over the phone. So I obviously never met him before, but somebody referred him to me to do this welding job. And he said, I have found a way, and this is back in 2011.
Okay.
So spring of 2011. So he says, yeah, I have found a way to save a wet cell phone. I can take all the moisture out in 30 minutes and it saves it. And I was like, you got to be kidding me, because joke.
And you're sitting at this company that you worked for before?
Yes.
I'm going to take that name out later.
Yeah, okay. And I said, no way, because my daughter had an iPhone, swimming in the pool. She was talking on the phone, and a bee starts going around, and she's swatting at it, trying to get away from it. Her phone slips out, falls in the pool. We go out and have to buy her a new $600 phone. So I was like, first thing I asked him was, does it work on iPhones? Because the iPhones had come out. It was the new big thing. Or actually, they came out in 2007 or 8. But anyway, so he said, yes, it works on iPhones. And I was like, oh my gosh, forget this welding thing. I got to come see this. So my son and I get a phone that we had in our drawer, an older phone. It was actually a flip phone.
That worked.
And, it was working. Okay. We charged it up, and I put it in the sink water and swished it around, tried to turn it on, nothing happened. And so I take it out to him, and it was kind of a kludgy device. I was expecting a more of a complete machine. But anyway, he puts it in there. 30 minutes later, we take it out, and the phone just turns on. And I'll just never forget that moment. It's like, okay, I got to see if it works on an iPhone. So he pulls out an iPhone, shows me this working, does the same thing, and it saves it. So I was like, this is incredible. Now, this was a true garage invention. This guy lived in a double wide out, west of town, and he said, again, I've got all kinds of things. I just never been able to do anything. And I was thinking to myself, well, I've always wanted to be an inventor, but I'm just not smart enough to invent anything. Right. But I've always wanted to market a product. And
I'm just not creative enough. Like, I'm like, oh, I wish I could be an inventor, and then that's where I stop. I'm not creative.
It's my son and I are on our way home, and I'm thinking to myself, this is an incredible opportunity, because I thought back, my daughter, this would have saved me $600. My first thought was, how many people have a phone? Well, everybody. So how many phones are there? So it was a simple Google search. How many people are in the United States? Over 300 million. How many people have a cellular phone or a phone?
299 million.
It was actually higher, because some people have multiple devices.
That's right. That's right.
So with that, the next question was, how often does this happen? Like, does it happen to my daughter? So I did a little searching, and there wasn't really anything at the time on wet phones. So I did some kind of Google survey, and it turned out that 12% of the people say that within a 12-month period of time they've gotten their phone wet. So let's just keep it simple. 1 in 10 people will get their phone wet, sink, tub, pool, toilet, and
once a year.
Within a 12-month period. So if you do the math, just simple math, you boil it down, that many phones, it's over 85,000 phones a day get wet in the United States. So let's make it simple. San Antonio, a little over 1 million people, 10% get their phone wet, divided by 365. It's over 300 people a day, on average, in the city of San Antonio, have a wet phone. So I thought to myself, okay, 300 people a day, this is a product that it will save them money, they can use it. And so I immediately started thinking, okay, how do we make that thing that he showed me in his double wide trailer, how do we make that into a product, and where is the product, where can people use that service? So I called him back up the next day, and I said, hey, let's go partners in this thing.
Could you even sleep that night?
No. I was just running numbers. I was thinking it was just a whirlwind of thoughts. And so he said, yeah, let's do partners. Now, this is cool how he came up with the idea, how he invented it. His wife...
Are y'all still partners?
No, he's not. He's just he's an advisor.
Okay.
We basically had bought him out. Okay. So he came. His wife she was cleaning a house, and her phone drops in the mop bucket. She comes home crying, and he's like, "Honey, what's happened? What happened? What's going on?" And she goes, "My phone got wet." And he was like, "Okay, I thought like something serious had happened." And she goes, "My phone had everything on it. It's got all my information on it." And he said, well, let's take it to the store. So he took it to the wireless store where we bought it from, and the guy said, there's really nothing we can do about it. He goes, there's nothing. My only option is to buy a new phone. This is 21st century. He says, yeah, unfortunately it happens all the time, and there's nothing you can do. And he said, absolutely nothing. And he said, nope, you can put it in kitty litter or rice. And he jokingly said, well, the phone's wet, not hungry. I just can't believe that's the only option is this, home remedy of dry kitty litter or uncooked rice. And the guy got a little snarly and just said, look, I'm sorry. If you have a better idea, come up with something, you'll make $1 million, because it does happen all the time. So sure enough, he goes home and he Oh, he says it took him about 3 weeks. I think it took him, a little over a month, and he came up with the concept, and they started testing it. Sure enough, he refined a little bit and started testing it out, and that's how the concept of dry box came about.
So is this process chemically motivated, or is it like I know there's secrets.
It's vacuum pressure. So the science behind it is that it pulls vacuum inside the chamber. There's a sealed chamber. Now, this is not vacuum like a vacuum cleaner. This is high pressure vacuum. Doesn't hurt the phone. But what happens is, the science behind it is vacuum pressure lowers the boiling point of water. So to vaporize the moisture, wherever water can get in, any kind of nook, cranny, or crevice, where the water can get in, then the water can be extracted by evaporating it. And so what the vacuum pressure does is it lowers the boiling point of water. We gently heat the phone up. Then we let the ambient air come back in, and we do the whole process over again. And after 30 minutes, it removes all moisture that can get in a cell phone, a smartphone, a small electronic device. So that's the science behind how the dry box works. And yes, we do have a few patents on it.
I would imagine so. So this was 2011. Like, what was the next step? So this guy came up with this idea, and then I guess kind of it just sat in his garage or whatever because he didn't know what to do with it until happenstance you run across this guy. I'm assuming you don't still work for that company.
No.
So like, what was the process of, like, how did you decide to put it into I haven't seen one like in the flesh. I've just online. So how did you figure out what happened next?
So I told you I called him the next day and said, "Hey, I think we've got something here. This is fascinating. Let's be partners." So we formed just a small partnership, and I said, "I can."
Just you and him, or you
just
him
the
and
two
your
of
son?
us. Just
Okay.
the two of us. So we split it 50-50, and we said, "Let's see what we can do." I said, I've always wanted to try to market a product and make $1 million off of it," and he said, "Okay." So the first thing I asked him was, "You're using a mason jar, as I told you, it's vacuum pressure and it's a sealed chamber, but his kludgy device that he showed me in the beginning was a simple mason jar that he had rigged up and kind of made it a little bit more heavy duty, if you will, and of course the vacuum pump, and he used the kind of the light as the heat." I said, "Can you make a product? I mean, can you make this into like some kind of product, because we can't market what you have here."
Yeah, you can't
And
sell
so
a mason jar.
You can't sell that, and it needs to be a product. So I hate to use the analogy of a microwave oven, but it needs to be like something that people can use, or that it's a product. And
I think
he
it's a
said
perfect
he said, "I can
analogy."
do that." And I said, "How much do you think it would cost?" And he said, "Well, it's probably going to cost about $10,000 just to put it all together." So I called a couple of friends and family and kind of explained this whole idea, and they were all fascinated. And so we quickly found $10,000. That was our first investment in the company, which mostly went to making the first prototype. We actually made two of them, and we had a product, and we went to North Star Mall.
North Star Mall is one of the bigger, probably the biggest, flashiest mall in San Antonio at the time.
Yeah, and it still probably is. It's your typical flagship mall of any major city, so
Yes.
people can relate to the whole point was
It's an indoor mall.
It's an indoor mall. The whole point was in the business model process is we had an idea, we had a product, we knew that it worked, but we needed more of does it work, but more importantly, will people use it? So at North Star Mall, a lot of major malls, they have those carts in the middle,
kiosk.
a kiosk. They embroider shirts or curl hair, or sell
Right.
a little toy or something. And so
Essential oils.
we went in, and I'll never forget talking to the leasing manager, and I said of specialty leasing, and I said, "You're going to remember this day for the rest of your life." And she said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Yeah. We want to lease a cart, and here's our product. We can save wet cell phones." And her eyes kind of perked up a little bit, and she was almost like, "Okay, tell me more." And so I kind of explained what we wanted to do, and she said, "Okay, this ought to be interesting." So we put our dry box in one of those carts, put up the signage, and just put it up as wet phone. We can save it here in 30 minutes. Our biggest boon was the local TV station. I believe it was the Fox News station here in San Antonio. Got wind of what we were doing and said, "Can we do a story on this?" And so they came out with their TV crew and did a dunk-to-phone and used the dry box, and sure enough, it worked. Thank goodness. Of course, we'll get to this, but the dry box doesn't work every time. There's so many variables involved. But it was a successful save of the anchor person's phone, or the reporter's phone. And
it was this person's actual phone?
He'd brought his own phone just to verify, truth in reporting, right?
Oh my gosh, that's scary.
So when it aired that Thursday, I think he came out and they filmed that Thursday lunchtime, and it aired at 7 o'clock news that night. We had about 7 people the next day show up with phones.
How many did you have before the story?
Well, the story aired within the first 2 or 3 days that we were out there. But from that point on, we had a steady flow of about 3 to 4 phones a day. And so what that allowed us to do is, okay, these aren't phones that we dunked. These are phones that people may have gotten wet 2 or 3 days ago, whatever. So, of course, the information was key. So when they came, we, of course, asked, we documented, okay, when did it happen? What type of exposure was it? What did you do? Did you try to turn it on? What type of device is it, et cetera, et cetera. So,
right. Was it toilet water? Was it chlorine water? Was it 9 feet deep? Was it 1
exactly.
foot deep?
So we started getting just a lot of cases of, okay, this is real life example of how will this product work. And so we did that for 4 months because the kiosk was expensive.
Sure.
As due. However,
remember how we said that was a
we were almost
mall?
profitable. And our model at the time, we started out with basically only charging if the phone was saved. However, what we found was we were kind of getting a backlog, and people were bringing in phones that got wet months and months ago because they just thought this was a magic device that could just save any phone. But the key, of course, is getting the moisture out as soon as possible. So we changed our pricing, and we went to a $20 for the service, and if we can save the phone, it's $40. So, of course, we had a representative that was sitting there at the cart the whole time, waiting for people to come up, and they'd process the phone. So we averaged about 2 phones a day. We had about a 65% success rate. Now, if we went back through the documentation and kind of weeded out and said, okay, after 2 days, that's when we started getting up into the 70% range of success. So we were thrilled. As far as a test market goes, it was a success because we found the answers to 3 things. Do we have a product that can be out there in the marketplace? Yes, we can make a product. Does it work? Yes. And finally, and most importantly, will people come and use it? And can you make money off of it? Because it's one thing if people come and use it, but you really can't make any money off of it. So the model worked. People were willing to pay. At that time, we were charging $40. They were willing to pay $40 to get their phone saved. So that's when we started thinking, okay, where can we have these machines? Because somebody does have to operate it. In other words, it doesn't take any technical skill or a technician, but it's as simple as just putting the phone in and turning the knob and letting it go for the 30 minutes and getting it out.
Can the user operate it?
Well, this again is our very first machine,
Gotcha,
which was
okay.
a desktop machine.
Gotcha.
We'll get to the advent of self-service in a little bit.
Okay.
Anybody could use it, but it did take somebody to come up and go, okay, my phone got wet, just kind of pre-qualify and then perform the service. So our initial thought was, of course we had many, but our best at the time, which we thought was, this should be at every Best Buy in the Geek Squad department, because Best Buys are everywhere. They're nationwide. There's at least a few in each city and in some of the smaller cities. This would be something that they could perform the service, and then we could just share the revenue. So we contacted them. There was interest there. They said they looked at our machine and basically said, okay, that we see this as obviously a prototype. Can you manufacture a machine that is more of a certified machine, and we'd like to do some testing on it. And so we thought, well, okay, but you know what? Best Buy may not be the only option. What about Office Depots or office boxes, or what about repair shops? It was just, how do we get this serviced so people, when it happens, they know about it and they know where it is and they can go use it. During that time too, I personally thought that the name Dry Box was a wonderful name because it kind of said, here's what it does, it dries it, and it was a simple 3-letter dry and a 3-letter box, so Dry Box. It was kind of a cool brand, we thought, because everybody knows what a red box is, and we weren't trying to copy that, but we were just trying to, okay, here's what it does. We branded it Dry Box, and we started trying to make the machine into more of a product that was I guess we could manufacture it and not just kind of put it together. That's when we really started getting interest from some of our current friends and family, and we really were able, on a shoestring budget, to start bringing this together. We brought in a patent attorney. We really made stone soup, if you will. So every time that we brought somebody in, instead of paying for services like our attorney fees for patent work, we would offer percentage of the company. And so we did that with a couple of our attorneys, and we did that with somebody that manned the kiosk in the very beginning. So we basically were trying to just keep our costs low by just giving out potential of the company as it moves forward. So with that, we started making some machines. Best Buy, kept saying we need to get something that has, that's been certified and, CE and all that kind of stuff. And so just to get some more traction and momentum, we started soliciting these things to repair shops. And repair shops received wet phone traffic because people were already coming in saying, hey, my phone got wet. Now, a repair shop, what they do is they take the phone apart and they put it in an ultrasonic cleaner. And it's a labor-intensive process. There's no guarantee. And they really, they'd rather stick to repairs like fixing cracked screens, etc. So really, water damage repair was really not something they liked to go into, just because it was not a guarantee and it was labor intensive. So there was some interest in that, but what really helped us get the attention was we started getting some media attention. USA Today wrote an article on us. Fox News in New York City, or Fox Business, called us up and said, could you come up to New York City and put your thing on TV? So we really started getting some notoriety and getting some traction in that, getting us some interest. So that's when we came to this. It was we needed money, because in order to manufacture this machine, which, by the way, at the time, the components that we used to create the vacuum and all that, they're expensive components. So we were making these machines for about $4,000 or $5,000. And that was kind of tough, because how do you make this business model, into this profit making for not only who would house the machine, but who would, how we would make money. We got about 20 locations out there, and we were making money, but we weren't growing. We didn't make any more progress with Best Buy in that Geek Squad department. We kept just thinking outside the box, if you will, no pun intended. And we came up with the idea, what if we made this a self-service machine? And going back to our example of what we were doing in the mall, instead of having a kiosk and paying for the rent of the kiosk and a person to man it, if this thing could be self-service, we could just have this thing sitting in the mall, next to the ATM or next to the vending machines.
That rent has to be cheaper.
It absolutely cheaper, and it's a self-service machine, so we can just multiply. We don't have to worry about finding partners to perform the dry box service. So with that, we thought...
and it could be 24 hours.
Exactly. Well, the mall's not open completely 24 hours, but that's where we thought, okay, what's the ultimate retailer in the world? It's Walmart. Mm-hmm. And so we thought, okay, well, we're here in San Antonio. We developed the very first self-service machine in 2014, and we introduced it back into North Star Mall about 100 yards from where our kiosk was in the first place. And it was the very first self-service dry box machine. And this was in May of 2014. And it got on the news again, and it started averaging 2 phones a day. Now, what's great about the self-service machine is that it's credit card only, has an internal wireless modem. It collects all the data as far as how many dries it does, and it reports it. And the phone stays secure. The credit card acts as the key. And we started drying about an average of 2.5 phones a day. Now, in the summertime, we were doing like 3 or 4 phones a day, and then in the winter months, it is seasonal. Not as many phones go in the pool or the lake. And but annualized, we were drying about 2.5 phones a day. So that's when we took that data and we got to HEB and said, here's the proposition. People use this thing. People see it in the mall. They walk by it. They see that, if my phone gets wet, this thing can save it. So what happens is it's foot traffic. And so HEB agreed. We leased the space from HEB.
HEB is a local grocery chain in Texas, and it's one of the largest grocery retailers. Might even be the largest in the state.
Well, it's definitely largest in the state. It's actually the largest privately held grocery chain in the nation with 350 stores, but they're primarily in Texas, which is predominant in Texas. So we put them in 12 HEBs in Austin and San Antonio, and they started doing really well, got a lot of media attention, and we expanded with HEB. In 2015, we got an email from Walmart corporate and a director there asking if we would be interested in expanding into Walmart stores. And that was kind of like one of the most exciting days of our lives, because we were like, are you kidding me? It's so hard to get into Walmart. Now, granted, we're not like your typical Walmart product where they buy our product, put it on a shelf, and then, they pay us. Correct. We're just leasing the space from them, and we collect the revenue, and then we just pay them a percentage. So we were so excited, so hard to kind of find, people always go, golly, if I could just get my product in the grocery store or in Walmart or on Amazon or whatever. We were flabbergasted. So we introduced 12 units in Dallas, Texas, in Walmarts, in 12 Walmarts in Dallas. And this was in June of 2016.
Okay.
And so they started doing pretty well, but what we found was we weren't getting the media attention. And that was our boost, because it was kind of free, earned media attention. And so going back to kind of one of our biggest challenges all along, in my example of in San Antonio, 300 phones a day get wet. Well, if everybody in San Antonio knew about the dry box, we would be doing at HEB locations, we'd be doing 200, 300 phones a day. However, if people don't know about it, they don't use the service. And so what was happening was as we put in new units, at the time we had 24 with HEB, and then we added the 12 with Walmart in San Antonio or in Dallas. We noticed that the Walmarts weren't being used as much. So advertising is expensive, and we started doing a little advertising. It did provide a ROI. However, it's hard to gauge how effective advertising is with our type of product, because in a sense, an analogy is we're like an injury attorney. People don't just hear it and go, oh, I'm going to go use that. I'm going to go buy that candy bar. I'm going to go buy that laundry detergent next time I need to do it. They need to know about it and remember it when it happens.
And remember where it is.
Exactly. So what we did is right now we're in this kind of interesting stage. To date, we've got 50 locations out there, and to date, we have dried over 30,000 phones with our machines.
Wow.
With our, at the time, right now we've got 50, but we started out with the first 12. So if you just kind of average that out, the model behind it right now is it's $39 for the 30-minute service at Dry Box self-service location.
Whether it works or not?
We offer a full money-back refund. So they pay for it right there, and then if it does not work, there's a form on our website that they fill out, and the only thing we ask for is some type of proof of replacement. In other words, an insurance deductible or a receipt from the Apple store or the wireless store where they purchase a phone. That way people don't just call in and say, hey, it didn't work, and we have no idea because it's self-service. But it's interesting in that we get about a 5% request for refund. So going back to percentage of success, I'm not going to say we're 95% successful. There are people kind of like a rebate that just never, go to the trouble to fill it in. We average about a phone a day at each location. So the economics behind it is each location is profitable. The idea is we just need to get more and more locations. And so the cost of our machine, we're trying to really trim that down. It's all about quantity. So right now we're looking at, we've got some New York investment partners that hopefully can just make this thing explode. And that way we can have dry box service all around the world.
This podcast does go all over the world. We have listeners in, I think right now it's 18 countries. So maybe somebody will hear it and be excited.
We get inquiries on our website all the time from, we've probably gotten them from every single country and then multiple times from those countries. What we're trying to do is just get it going in our own backyard first, if you will.
Sure. So these machines, does it do one phone at a time?
We do have machines that have dual chambers, so two people could be using the device, but it greatly reduces the cost of our machine if it's a single chamber. And so we kind of at an average of about a phone a day. The longest somebody would be waiting would be 30 minutes if somebody just came right in front of them to use it.
Cool. You said that you wouldn't say that your success rate is 95%. What would you say your success rate is?
I'll put it with the caveat that if it truly is, if somebody uses the dry box within the first 24 hours of it getting wet, there's about a 70%. If they use it within the first 2 to 3 hours, it's going to go up to about an 80% success rate.
Really?
And it's just because that water, what happens is it sits on the parts, and as it slowly dries over time, it corrodes and it rusts, and that causes the shorts in the internal components of the phone. And that's why the old age home, 99% of the people you ask them if the phone gets wet, and they're like, oh, just use rice. Well, that's the popular home remedy. Well, that's, some people say, oh yeah, my phone's, I saved it in rice. Well, there are people that have just gotten their phone wet and left it out, but the water didn't necessarily get in those important components, so it didn't damage them. And so they could have just left it out on the counter or continue to use it. It's not going to get it, but they put it in rice and they go, oh, it's saved. But rice doesn't rapidly dry out the phone, and on top of that, you never know when all the moisture's out of there and it's safe to use again.
Right. Before I heard about this product, and I still have it, but like over the last probably year, I've been collecting, when you buy shoes or whatever, you get those little packs of desiccant.
Right.
That silicant or whatever it's called. Silica gel, whatever those things are. And so like I have a little cigar box, and in that cigar box is a freezer bag that I open up those packages and dump all those beads into that freezer bag just in case this were to ever happen to me. But now I can throw that bag away, man.
Well, again, it's just like rice. When you put it in something like that, you're thinking it's going to rapidly remove the moisture, but hey, you don't know when the moisture's removed.
Right.
So you're playing Russian roulette with the phone. On top of who wants to wait hours or up to days for it to get out. And there actually has been a study that shows that actually if you leave a phone out and there's moisture in it, leaving it out just on a warm summer day, it actually will dry over time. It usually takes up to 48 hours. It's faster than rice. Rice is, people think it's a desiccant, but it's not.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's really funny. So how many locations do you have right now?
Right now we have 50 locations between the HEBs and the Walmarts. We are in a couple of university student unions, like we're at the University of Texas in Austin. Enrollment there is about 50,000 people. College kids are very careless. They're probably the most prone to getting their phone wet.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a few factors. They're the most active group, and they didn't pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of that's a double-edged sword there, because a lot of them, they're so instant gratification. There's like, oh, I'll just call mom and dad and get, I'll just go buy that new upgraded phone or whatever.
Right. Going through, like, you get your phone wet and you take it to the Apple Store. Well, first of all, you got to get on the waiting list. I don't know if you've been in an Apple Store lately, but there's a host, and you got to get on a waiting list and wait 30, 40, sometimes an hour to even talk to anybody. And then, depending on if your phone's under warranty, you're looking at more than the $40.
Oh, no, absolutely.
And they tell you, like, I just took my son in to have his screen fixed, because everybody who has an iPhone has a cracked screen for some reason. But they said, yeah, well, once we get it open and we make sure there's no water in it, then it'll be this amount of money. And this is under warranty, with the coverage. They said it'll be, I don't think it was $25 if there's no water in it. If there's water in it, there's going to be like $150 or whatever they said. And then we are not going to be able to guarantee you we can fix it, even for that amount of money.
They don't even try to fix it there. They just give them a refurbished one, and of course you're paying, if you don't have Apple Care, you're paying hundreds of dollars. Yeah, they don't warranty. Which, Steve, I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people out there may be thinking, well, some of these new phones are coming out waterproof, and we just hate to hear that word waterproof, because they're not waterproof. They're water resistant. And it's bringing up that warranty. Both Apple and Samsung that have these water resistant phones, they don't cover them if they do get wet. And in fact, in the fine print, they say if your phone does get wet, don't use it until it dries out. Well, what does that mean? And so they also say in the fine print, this water resistance may wear off over time. And so what they've done is they put these seals in there that just kind of repel the water a little bit. And so right now, there's not a waterproof phone out there. And that goes back to before that came out, people had life-proof cases or otter boxes, those. And I can't tell you how many stories we've had where people were like in a canoe, on a tube, in the lake, by the pool, by the beach, and they had had a case that was supposedly waterproof, but they didn't seal it up. They didn't put the plug in, or they didn't have the seal, or the seal broke. And so not only the water didn't didn't stay out. It actually went in and then kind of stayed in there and swished around in there.
And even those OtterBoxes and life proofs cost more than your service.
Oh, they're expensive, and
Those are
they're
very
you know,
expensive.
not to knock their products, but they're bulky. You know, some people like to keep their phone as slim as possible. You know, keep in their pocket or whatever. Which a little interesting tidbit is the exposure. The most common exposure for liquid damage to a phone is the toilet. And
Yeah, my daughter
it's
did that. She was, I want to say, middle school, like maybe 8th grade, maybe 9th grade, one of those. And she always used to keep her phone in her back pocket.
Sure.
And you know, she's a little girl, petite, so she had little pockets. And so yeah, she called us one day. We were out, my wife and I were out on grocery shopping or something, and she called from the landline, and we were like, whose number even is that? Like, who calls us from that? And so she was like, you know, I dropped my phone in the toilet. And we were like, oh my God, well, does it work? She's like, I don't know, it's still in the toilet. And like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm not putting my hand in the toilet. But yeah, I mean, that phone never worked again. I 100% believe that the most exposure is the toilet. I mean, it's gotta be.
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody doesn't have a pool, but everybody has a toilet.
We've heard so many stories, you know, just some of which that just really stick out. Somebody said, yeah, my cat peed on my phone. We've heard, I was changing the motor oil in my car, and my phone dropped in the bucket of oil. It's
Wow.
it's just amazing how many occurrences are. And another thing to bring up, people might ask is, does this work on other devices? And yes, absolutely, it works on any electronic device, because it extracts the moisture. So cameras and hearing aids and walkie-talkies and game controllers, I mean, you name it, we have dried those in our machines. And since it's self-service, we don't know what type of device goes into every machine, but it's not just the cell phones. And that's kind of another thing we bring up is that, well, gee, don't you worry about phones becoming more and more water resistant or even waterproof? And we're like, well, there's a time for a transition out there, but at the same time, we've you know, Fitbits, and we've heard it all. The only thing we don't do right now is our self-service machine only accepts a device under 7 inches in width.
I was going to ask.
So it doesn't do a laptop computer. It will do like a Kindle or an iPad mini, but a typical laptop or a full-size iPad.
So is it 7 inches square?
7 inches in width, and so height-wise, which is really not an issue because most devices are slim, it's 7 inches in width and it's 6 inches in height.
Okay. Oh man, that really sucks, because about 3 months ago, I had bought. I'm a big fan of, you know, the Kickstarter and tech and kind of stuff like that, and I had bought the first completely wireless Bluetooth earbuds. It's not that necklace you wear around your neck with the thing.
Right.
It's actual. There was this movie, I don't know, like probably 8 years ago with Ryan Reynolds. I can't remember the name of the movie, but at the very beginning of the movie, he's walking down the street and he just has these tiny little. They look like earplugs, and he's listening to whatever. And I've been looking for those for years, and they didn't exist. You know, they just made them up for the movie. And then there was this company out of Sweden that was started by some guys who left Ericsson and Nokia Ericsson, and they made these cool earbuds. Anyway, so I bought them on Kickstarter. You know, it was a year of waiting, you know, because Kickstarter is it's really a capital grab. And then I got them, and I've been using them, and they're great, and they come in like, you know, a little capsule, a little charging capsule. I guess it was about, like I said, 3 months ago or so, I washed that capsule. I left it in my pants or my shorts or whatever, and I washed them. And when I heard it rattling around in the dryer, I freaked out, and I pulled it out, and I'm like, oh my God, no. And so I had to buy another one. I couldn't, like, I called them, and they were like, I don't know what to tell you, man.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, we hear that a lot. Phones go in the washing machine. And what's interesting is that while we're self-service and we don't really know the exposure anymore, but, you know, in the beginning, people would, if they admitted to it being in the washing machine, every single one of them would go, oh, but it was just in there for a second. Kind of like telling us, hey, no, this thing better work because it was only in there for a second, but we know it went through the full cycle,
Yeah.
and even the dryer
Full
too.
cycle, yeah. Yeah, they found it in the dryer or on the way to the dryer. They didn't.
Which was encouraging to us at the time because those that admit it, we just, you know, assumed that it went through the whole thing. And while the success rate was not as high, we did have success with it. So when you
Really?
think about it, going through a whole cycle like that, and with all of the detergents and stuff like that. It's interesting. So yeah, people ask, I brought up the motor oil or the cat peeing on the phone, but salt water's a little bit more corrosive, but it does work. If somebody does get their phone wet in salt water, what we recommend doing, and I know it sounds counterintuitive, but rinsing it in some bottled water, or like a spring water, Ozarka, that kind of water, and switching out. Of course, keeping the phone off, don't try to turn it on, but that kind of rinses the phone, because water, again, going back to corrosion, is usually what happens to the phone. So how a phone is damaged is two things. It either shorts or it can corrode. Now, there's temporary shorts and permanent shorts. A lot of times while the moisture's there, it just keeps the phone from not working, or it may turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. What happens is, over time, or the permanent short, the water can damage it to where it fries a certain component that the phone will never work again. But that's not usually what happens. What happens is, over time, as that water starts to dry, that's when it starts corroding, and that's what causes the damage to the phone and internal workings of the phone. So that's the key right there. And so people ask, what about orange juice or whatever? The dry box will take the moisture out, but if it's something other than your basic water, it's recommended to rinse the phone out to get kind of that residue, because the water is not going to hurt it, but it's getting that water out after the water's in there. Very quickly get the water out of there so it doesn't dry up inside there.
That makes a lot of sense. I have a Samsung, and in the instructions it says it's water resistant to 5 feet for 30 minutes or something like that. But it says, it's very clear that if it does get exposed, whether it's a pool or salt water or whatever, it says to rinse it off with just like water for that reason.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. So you said that now that it's completely self-service, you don't have an attendant or whatever. So does that mean that you don't have a way to collect that data that you were collecting at the beginning?
Well, it would be possible. We try to, so the experience of somebody using the machine, which they can see on our website, dryboxrescue.com, is they go up to the machine, they go through a couple of steps. We try to make it as simple as possible. So we could be collecting some information of what type of phone it is, how long it get wet, but we don't want to make it just so exhaustive for the customer to go, what, am I ever going to put my phone in here? Because It's just amazing. I think a funny story is, just to interject in here, is one of the store managers at one of the grocery locations said the funniest thing happened last Saturday. Somebody came in, walking in, and they were soaking wet. Water was dripping from them. And they went up to the dry box, started using it. And we went up to him, sir, I guess we're going to go get the mop to kind of follow your trail of water. And he's like, I don't care. I jumped in the pool by accident. I fell into the pool by accident with my phone in my pocket. And the first thing I did was get in my car and drive to the HEB to use this dry box, because I got to have my phone working.
Oh, that's fantastic.
He didn't even take time to dry off. He just hit straight. So with that said, when people have a wet phone and they want to use the dry box, they're like, hey, I want to get this thing in here. So to answer your question about collecting data, we could, but that would be a lot of questions, and then disseminating the data and all that kind of stuff. So the machine's fascinating. What we do is that we have 24-hour customer support. So if people have questions while they're using the machine, we can remote into the machine. We can operate the machine remotely. We can open and close doors. We can give them promo codes, etc. But it's fascinating. We get enough data from our machine with generally what it's doing right now, and so it's just fascinating how technology where it's come to.
I know you said you have 50 locations. Are they all in Texas?
They're all in Texas.
So is there a way, or some sort of this is going to sound ridiculous, but is there some sort of like a mail-in service where somebody who, let's say, lives in Louisville, Kentucky, and they want to try their phone, whatever? Does that exist? We
do not offer that, and the reason why, and it's a great question, it's been brought up a lot. The reason why, and we tried it, is that
we tried it.
We tried it. We tried it actually a couple of years ago. But first of all, it's to even promote that. How do you promote that you have the mail-in service? Well, it's how would somebody in Louisville come across our website, because we don't market it, which is another question on kind of what we do to market, as far as maybe social media and Google keyword searches, stuff like that. But first of all, for somebody in Louisville, Kentucky to even think about, how do they know about Drybox? If Drybox is not even in their area, how are they going to, how are they going to just magically find Drybox? But most importantly, it's all about time. And by the time you take to mail in something, and then for us to process it and then have to send it back, where the clock's ticking. And so another thing too is that the dry box, having a self-service location that's hopefully just down the street at the the local convenience store, the Walmart or grocery store, that's instant gratification. They can do it right then. They have control of the phone. Some people just don't want to give up their phone. It's like maybe what if they saved it and they could somehow get in my phone, that kind of thing. And we just didn't want to go through that. We weren't able to be able to market that service is available, and then the clock's ticking, and then number 3, people just really don't want to be without their phone. It's like they're going, hey, if I'm going to be without my phone for 2 days, I might as well just go buy a new one.
Right. That all makes sense. Kind of feel dumb for asking now that I thought about that, now that you explained it all.
No, but there were people that mailed in their phone, but it just wasn't a viable model.
I guess when I first thought about it, I wasn't considering, like you said, the clock is ticking. So, I mean, if it takes 2 days to get the phone here, then there's water in the phone for 2 days.
And on top of that, it's depending on where they are, of course you want to overnight it, right, to just save on time, but then that costs money. So you might be talking about $20 just to mail it in.
Right.
And then if it's not successful, it's sorry, you spent $20, and then we have to. We can't just go, sorry, we're not going to send it back to you. We'll just recycle it. They're going to want it back. So
right.
There's going to be cost in sending it back. So if we only had a desktop and we were, having issues of trying to find where can the desktop, locations be, mail-in service and promoting that might be a possibility. But that's the advent of the machine being self-service, so we can just place them in, hopefully convenient locations. That kind of instant gratification.
What are your plans? Like, what are the goals?
Our goal is to keep expanding. Right now, it's about raising the capital to continue the growth model, because it's building the machines. They do have a nice return, the current rates we're doing, but it's an expensive process to build the machines.
Now you said I think you said it was like $5,000 or something.
Right now, we could maybe get the machine down to $5,000, but we're paying about $8,000 right now for the machines.
Wow. And you said it's a lot more if it's a double.
It'd be a little bit more if it was a double. They are manufactured here in the United States, here locally, actually just outside of Boston.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
On this side of Austin?
In the Leander area. So
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Is there any place that obviously you want to be in all the places, but as far as like a hit list, I know you got H-E-B and you got Walmart. Did Best Buy, did that ever happen?
The contact at Best Buy actually left the company. We had the hardest time reaching back out and finding the contact. It's interesting you say that, because here's another thing. People say this all the time. It's, you should be near water parks, near marinas and things like that. What we've always thought, which I think would be a wonderful idea, is these cruise ships should have one of our dry box machines on their cruise ship near their swimming pool or water park area, because if you think about it, they're doing excursions when they dock at at some of their stops. But of course, people are by the pool, and a lot of these cruises have water parks and all that kind of stuff. And these people are captive. There's nothing to do.
Yeah,
on the
they're
cruise
on
ship.
an island.
And we think it is like, gee, we should there should be one at Disney. There should be one. But finding those people to say, hey, here, this is a service that you can have. It'd be a concierge service. Think about it. For $7,000 or $8,000, this is a service you could provide your customers, and have it on. Well, with it being self-service, they could make money off of doing that. It'd more than pay for itself. But we see that because we have had people that say, you wouldn't believe how many people at the cruise ship we've seen that get their phones wet, and I know it happens. And those cruise ships have thousands and thousands of people on them. They're constantly running. But yeah, with that's kind of the whole idea of the Walmart concept. Is Walmart's everywhere. There's been some interesting statistics come out about Walmart, and they say right now that 95% of the population of the United States is within like 10 minutes of Walmart.
Wow.
I think you can Google statistics of Walmart. It's fascinating. It's like, how many people they serve a day, or how many people walk in their stores a day, and it's mind-boggling. That's it. We're in a world of convenience. That's nowadays you order something on Amazon and it's there within a few hours. On a Sunday. It's just amazing how rapidly things are changing to where we want something, we want it now.
Wow. That blows me away about the proximity for Walmart. That's insane. And it started in a little old tiny town in Arkansas. That's crazy. So, is your ultimate goal to build this up and then sell it to GE or something?
Our ultimate goal is to is to build it up. I'm just smart enough to know that there are smarter people than me, and kind of running this whole thing at all ends. It's kind of tough, and it's like you think of, there's one body, but there's many parts, and I might just be a good elbow, but I'm not a good knee, and so getting this proven out and getting it, momentum-wise, I think there's a lot of companies out there that could probably really take the process and make it, more efficient. When I don't mean the drawing of the phone, I mean the operation of expanding the company and its presence, because it's proving itself. It's just a matter of it just needs fuel. It needs fuel added to the fire, which also brings up, people ask us that you mentioned Kickstarter. Our product's wasn't a good thing, obviously not now, but even in the beginning, it wasn't a good thing for Kickstarter, because usually Kickstarter, you have a product and you get to get that product. Well, Drybox is not a household product. It would never be something where, somebody has their own little mini Drybox desktop. They ask all the time, well, this should have been on, you should have been on Shark Tank. Well, ironically enough, we had the opportunity, but for a couple of reasons, can't disclose, we didn't do it. And
is it because they're a bunch of dicks?
Well, if you think about it,
they're so mean sometimes.
Well,
man.
they are, and that was another thing too. It's like, if you can't explain, this isn't something like, we have a new way to download or rent DVDs or whatever, people can understand that. But when you say we have a way to save a wet phone, we got to talk a little bit more about it. You got to talk a little bit more about it. And so the last thing we want to do was kind of get negative exposure when we don't really get the chance to fully explain it, because they cut and edited so much.
They
and
edit
so
and produce the
bottom
shit
line
out
is,
of the
I had a high school friend that was actually on Shark Tank for some kind of, it was a water cooler. It was like a koozie kind of deal, and he just got ripped to shreds. And he said, what happens is, he goes, it really didn't go as bad as you saw it, but they edit the way they edit it, and I'm not knocking it, it's just, we didn't do it for a couple of reasons. And what happened is, we look back and think it would have been great exposure, but at the same time, there were some risk, involved with that. So.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think it would have been a perfect thing for us. And with that being said, they actually, believe it or not, kind of reached out to us. We had inquired initially, but then a year later, they actually reached out to us and said, "Hey, would you, consider?" Because it's a unique product. It's, you're getting to the point now where you're seeing a lot of these episodes, and you're just like going, seriously? It's kind of like, the Voice or whatever. So I'm like, okay, we're just seeing way too many things that are the same thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique product, which I think everybody needs. They even had a product on a while back that was like a cell phone sanitizer, where it was like this UV light operated thing, and I mean, they just shredded that guy to pieces.
I think I saw something similar to that where one of them got a deal. But yeah, you just never know. It's fun being a part of this because we really do save people. We don't save everyone, but it's kind of like CPR. CPR is not guaranteed.
Right.
And that's where a lot of the techie people kind of go, oh, you have a heart attack, there's no way, or think of mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. That's kind of more what it's like. What's the science behind putting air down, mouth to mouth, breathing into somebody and pushing on their thing? What's the science behind that where somebody says, no, you have a heart attack, CPR is not going to work, you need to go into the operating room? And we're like, no, just like CPR works, ours works. It's fun being a part of something that really does save somebody, because it's one of those things where people freak out, and a lot of times people think, if I got my phone wet, I don't know, what do I do? But when it does happen, that's when they freak out and go, heck yeah, I'm going to use that Drybox.
Well, if you think about it, our whole lives are in these phones now. Every
Absolutely.
bit. We barely know our own phone numbers, much less anybody else's phone number now. Not to mention all the contacts and the photos, and just there's so much in our phones.
You're lost without it, absolutely.
Like you said, I don't know what I would do. We're all just walking around on a ledge, At any moment, anybody's phone is going to go into the toilet, and then you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
But not with Drybox.
Not with Drybox.
So I see on your, let's call that a logo, on your hat, I see that the R and the X are red.
Very perceptive.
Is that a prescription for a wet phone?
Prescription for a wet phone. That was our tagline in the very beginning. Now we're Drybox Wet Phone Rescue. So.
Well, I like it. That's a pretty cool design. I like it a lot. Okay, so as we're wrapping up here, is there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to say?
No, I think we pretty well covered. I'm sure there's a couple little things here and there that people probably wonder, like, what about that? What about that? We pretty much heard it all. But going back to just the idea of the business, I think I can count on one hand how many people have said something other than not just excitement about the idea of like the typicals. Oh my gosh, that's the coolest idea.
That's what I said as soon as I walked in.
We've had a couple of people say, oh, I don't know if people would use that, or And
who says that?
I don't know. It's what's interesting is that that's kind of generally what happens, and that's what makes our challenge right now, which again is awareness, and it's education, because it's not only awareness that our product exists, but it's the education of what to do with your phone. Don't try to turn it on. Don't use rice and all that kind of stuff. The education of, hey, you got to use it right now. You can't just wait and go, okay, well, I'll go next Saturday when I have time, to do that. But kind of we brought that up. It's like people, for the most part, they can't wait for anything these days.
So there are some rules. So you would say, don't turn your phone on.
Yeah, general guidelines is, and this just increases the chance of success, is don't try to turn it on, and definitely don't try to charge it. Getting it to the dry box as soon as possible. And then also it's that education part of, like I mentioned on the, if it's salt water or if it's orange juice or something else, is that, it's kind of hard to educate people on, okay, here's what you do. It's almost like educating people enough where, if somebody's hurt, of course, emergency personnel, they know what to do, but a lot of times just your general public doesn't know, it's like, no, don't try to turn them over if their back's hurt or their neck, don't try, and
right.
People just do the craziest things, but the education part is really to increase the chance of success. If everybody was educated on it and they knew exactly what to do when their phone got wet, even some of these phones that are water resistant, they say, definitely don't try to charge your phone if it got exposed to water, because that'll short it out. People have a phone that they think is water resistant or waterproof. We still have people that have tried to dry their phone, and we have saved some of the 7s, because as I mentioned, they do say it wears off, or it can, they say it can, but inevitably it does over time. And so with that, it's almost like getting a tetanus shot. Just don't take your chances. If you poke yourself with a rusty nail, go ahead and just get the tetanus shot, so you can be safe and save your investment of your phone.
Fascinating. So basically, it has to be water. Like, we can get out water, but it has to just be water. Like, no citric acid, no.
Well, it'll dry the moisture of anything that's in there. So if it's orange juice, it's going to dry it out, but there might be some residue on there, and it just really depends on where that residue may be.
Whatever.
Yeah, the chlorine and the minerals in the water aren't necessarily. That's where that corrosion is those minerals, and that's what causes the corrosion. But if you can get that out, if you can dry that up before that starts to build, that's the key.
Do you have any plans to go public?
It's interesting you say that. That was brought up about 3 months ago, and not necessarily as a typical IPO, because those are expensive and take a long time, but we have looked at something they call it's called a reverse merger. And it's basically, you have these shell companies that are already listed on the exchanges, but they're not operating, and so they take over a new company. It's a kind of a complicated thing to explain, but that would be a way to expedite our growth for sure.
Okay, so the name of the company is Dry Ventures.
Dry Ventures Incorporated.
The name of the product is Dry Box.
Dry Box.
Right now you're in about 50 locations between Walmart and H-E-B, all in Texas. What's the website?
dryboxrescue.com.
Is there like a contact page on there?
There is.
Do you guys have a social media presence or Facebook?
We do. We have a Facebook and a Twitter account.
What are those?
It's funny you say that, but I think it's Drybox Rescue, and I think our Twitter account is Drybox Rescue as well.
Okay.
We have somebody that handles that. I'm not
sure.
I'm technically challenged.
Yeah, but I'm sure people can just search for it and find it.
Sure.
Awesome, David Naumann. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you sitting down with me. Like I said, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard of. And it was right in my own backyard. Oh, and I feel like the reason that I never saw it on the news or any of those times when you talked about it getting some exposure is because I was in Louisville, Kentucky from the end of 2013 to the middle of 2015.
No, absolutely, yeah.
And so some of that stuff he said was in 13 and 14 and the 15. So I think I was just gone at the wrong moment to hear about it. That's why I didn't know anything about it. But my friend who told me about it, he lives in Dallas, so he must have seen one somewhere. Last question: any plans to go into airports?
Interesting you say that. The people have mentioned that a lot. First of all, people are catching connecting flights. So yes, a ton of foot traffic, but people are connecting flights. So unless they're walking through from traveling and have a wet phone and go, oh, wait, hey, I do it, and have 30 minutes, couldn't use it. It would be great exposure for the name and the brand and what it does. However, think of it would need to be in airports like Atlanta or DFW or whatever. And of course, you're not going to have every single person that goes by there. But think about somebody who lives in San Antonio and it's at the San Antonio airport. Well, of course, it's going to be in the areas where all the people are, which is inside through security. So you can even go in to use the try box. So would you rather go to a HEB or a Walmart? Just drive down the street, or would you rather go to your airport to do it? But we actually had one of the airports, ask us about that. The rent space is astronomical. But
even for a small machine.
Even for a small machine, I mean, it's we just if you think about it, there's a ton of traffic, but people are usually connecting, and so they don't have time to sit there and wait for 30 minutes to do it. And B, they'd have to have a wet phone with them right there at that time.
Yeah, that's true. Well, there you go. All right. Well, again, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
No, you're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Thanks.
Hey guys, if you like what I'm doing, rate and review the podcast on iTunes and wherever else you're getting the podcast. And if you do order things from Amazon, it would really help me out if you use that Amazon banner that's on the website at fascinationstreetpod.com and just click through whenever you're buying stuff from Amazon. You can click through the first time and then save that to your favorites or bookmark it. And every time you use it, you don't have to go to the website to get there. I appreciate it, guys. Enjoy. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.